Shalom u'bracha. It's a great honor to be part of this panel. The introduction to the event is I had just finished reading the book we'll be discussing, and I had gotten a copy from my dear friend Rav Gerzi. We were both enamored, and I had the good fortune of receiving a phone call from Rabbi Naor that suggested maybe we should have a panel. So at first we were going to do it myself and Rav Gerzi. Then I thought I have two wonderful friends and colleagues, Rav Ze'ev and Rav Dovid'l, who have also written texts about Rav Kook. So it'd be wonderful to hear from them as well. And that's how it came to be. I'm going to start by introducing my Rebbe, Rav Bezalel Naor. Rav Naor is acknowledged as an authoritative interpreter of Rav Kook's thought. He has translated several of his writings into English, including When God Becomes History, historical essays of Rav Kook, the legends of Rabbi Baruch Hana with commentary of Rav Kook, Orot, published by Magid, and the Koren Rav Kook Sidur. I can tell you that Rabbi Naor has, of course, published many dozens of other works, both in Hebrew and English. I have had the great privilege of learning with Rabbi Naor for many years since I was 19 years old. I have tremendous hakarat tov to all the Torah and kindness that he showed me. And on behalf of the other panelists as well, Rabbi Naor, I can say that we all feel the same way. So thank you so much. Next, we have my dear friend and colleague and teacher, Rabbi Yehoshua Gerzi. I'm going to read this biography from his website. I have shortened it a bit. I could speak about Rav Gerzi for a long time. I'll try not to. Rav Yehoshua Gerzi models living kindly, consciously, and with integrity while exuding an infectious appreciation for giving space to others so as to enable their unique light to flourish and shine. Endearingly known to his students as the Pilsno Rebbe, Rav Gerzi teaches extensively on the halachic and mystical tradition he has received from his family and mentors, stretching back to the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon, as well as Kabbalistic and halachic schools of the Sephardi and Edut HaMizrach Chachamim. As part of his own journey, has merited to serve as an aide with various Talmid Chachamim who are from pre-war generation, including Rav Yosef Singer, the Pilsno Rab. It was particularly Rabbi Singer who encouraged Rav Gerzi to further the vision and mission that we discussed below. Rav Gerzi is widely embraced for his unique contribution to Musar, Hasidic, and Kabbalistic thought, particularly in practical day-to-day living. Rav Gerzi is the Rav of the Pilsno Shul and Education Center. He teaches also at various yeshivot, and it's a great privilege to have any interactions with him. He is a beloved friend and teacher of many. Next, we have Rav Ze'ev Schwartz, who I have the great privilege of teaching his class at Yeshiva Torah Avoda. I will read the insert of his book, which is The Spiritual Revolution of Rav Kook, the Writings of a Jewish Mystic. Rav Ze'ev Schwartz is the co-founder and dean of the Society of Independent Spirituality, an English-speaking learning center in Jerusalem that combines Jewish spirituality and Zionism. Rabbi Schwartz is originally from Sydney, Australia, and studied at the University of New South Wales, majoring in music and film before coming to Jerusalem, where he studied for 8 years in several yeshivot in the Old City. Rabbi Schwartz received his rabbinical ordination at the Shehebar Sephardic Center in Jerusalem under Yaakov Peretz. He has a PhD, a bachelor's in education from Herzog Academic College, and is currently finishing a master's in education at Herzog. Previously, Rabbi Schwartz served as the head rabbi of Bnei Akiva's Hachshara program for 3.5 years. In addition, he teaches the writings of Rav Kook, Rabbi Nachman, Rav Shagar, Jewish philosophy and Tanakh at several yeshivot and midrashot in Jerusalem. Thank you so much for joining us. And finally, certainly not least, we have Rav Dovid'l, who has published his second book, Oros HaTorah. I'll read the caption here. Rav Dovid'l Weinberg and his wife Rina live in Ramot Bet, Yerushalayim, with their 3 children, Noah, Akiva, and Yonatan. Rav Dovid'l serves as a senior Rebbe to first and second students at Yeshiva Oraita and the Old Center across the greater Jerusalem area. His first book, Birth of a Spoken Word, Personal Prayer as a Goal of Creation, was published in 2020, and his shiurim and musical offerings can be found on multiple streaming platforms. a great honor of Dovid'l. I'm so enjoying your sefer. I'm still in the middle of it, and it's a great privilege to have you with us.
Before I read from Rav Kook, I want to thank Rabbi Eliyahu Allen and all the other distinguished panelists who have made this possible. I have one fond recollection. I have many fond recollections, but this one came to me for some reason. I remember one time the two of us, after we were learning, we broke into a rikud. We did a dance, just the two of us together. And in those days, there was a nigun. There was a song that was very popular, V'tein banu Yetzer Hatov, where we asked God to please give us a good inclination. And for whatever crazy reason, I improvised and I started to sing V'tein banu Yetzer Hara. Please give us a Yetzer Hara. I want to read this piece. I'm not going to read the Lashon HaKodesh, Rav Kook's Hebrew. I'm going to give you my own humble English translation. The ordinary direction of simplicity and rectitude, along with observance of good character traits and religious law, this is the way of the world of establishment, Olam HaTikun. And any breach of this, whether brought about by lightheadedness and wantonness or by intellectual assent and higher inspiration, belongs to the world of chaos, Olam HaTohu. Except there is a great difference when it comes to the details of the world of chaos itself and its tendencies to the right and to the left. The great idealists want a beautiful and good order, so firm and mighty that it has no comparison or foundation in the world. Therefore, they destroy that which is built in conformity to the world. The better idealists know also to rebuild the world that they have destroyed, but the worse idealists, who have been touched ever so lightly by the higher idealism, they only damage and destroy. The latter are rooted in the world of chaos at its lowest. Souls of chaos, neshamot tohu, are higher than souls of establishment, neshamot tikkun. They're very great. They seek much of existence, that which their vessels, their kelim, cannot support. They seek a very great light. They cannot tolerate whatever is finite, defined, and estimable. They descended from their elevation, from the beginning of the birthing of existence. They rose up as a flame and were extinguished. Their infinite longing will not end. They are garbed in various vessels. They aspire way beyond the measure. They aspire and fall. They see that they are imprisoned in laws, in circumscribed conditions do not allow them to expand beyond limit to unstoppable heights, and they fall into depression, into resignation, into anger, and from rage into wickedness, malice, lowliness, ugliness, abomination, destruction, and all manner of evil. Their agitation, their tesisa, will not be quiet. The souls of chaos are revealed in the brazen face of the generation. Azei panim shavador, the principal wicked, harashaim ba'alei haprincipim, the sinners who flaunt their sins, lahachis v'lo leteavon, their soul is very high from the lights of chaos, orot tohu. They have chosen destruction and they destroy. The world is robbed out by them, and they with it. But the essence of courage contained in their will is the point of holiness, the Kodesh Kodesh. When that point is absorbed into the souls that are limited in their approach, it gives them the strength of life. The souls of chaos are especially revealed at an end of days, at a period before the birth of the world, preceding a new and wonderful creative existence, on the verge of the expansion of borders, before the birth of a law that is above laws. In times of redemption, chutzpah waxes. A storm brews and continues to rage, breach after breach, chutzpah greater than chutzpah, dissatisfaction with the entire store of goodness of the limited finite light, because it fails to satisfy all the wants, because it does not remove all the masks covering all the faces, because it does not reveal all the mysteries and does not satiate all the desires. The souls of chaos kick it all, the good portion, the grains of happiness that leads to rest and eternal calm, that leads to eternal pleasure, to everlasting uplift. They kick and rage, break and destroy, go down to pasture in foreign fields, and are contented with alien ideologies. They desecrate all glorious beauty, and there is no satisfaction. These fiery souls show their strength, that no fence or limit can restrain them, and the weak in the world that has been built, masters of manners and measures, are terrified by them. Who of us can dwell with the devouring fire? Who of us can dwell with the never-dying blaze? But in truth, there is nothing to fear. Only sinners, weak souls, and flatterers fear and tremble. But the mighty in strength know that this show of strength is one of the visions that comes for the need of perfecting the world, for the need of fortifying the powers of the nation, man, and the world. Just as at the beginning, the strength is revealed in the form of chaos, tohu, and at the end it will be taken from the hands of the wicked and given over to the hands of the righteous, strong as lions, who will reveal the truth of the tikkun and the building with a mighty spirit of strong and clear intellect, with the courage of feeling, and with the revelation of permanent, decisive deed. So, Rav Eliyahu, I think we can now launch the panel discussion.
Excellent. So, Rabbi Naor, the first question is, why did you choose this piece in today's times? I think it's somewhat obvious, but I'm sure there is deeper thought with it. And why make an entire essay into a sefer?
You know, Rav Kook was a great Kabbalist. According to Professor Gershom Sholem, he was the greatest, most creative Kabbalist of the 20th century. And Sholem was not one to lavish praise on other people, if he could help it. Despite that, Rav Kook, very early on in his career, learned to camouflage his Kabbalistic origins. And this he followed in the ways of Maharal, who's a Kabbalist, but writes as if he's some kind of rationalist philosopher. Another one who engaged in this form of camouflage or subterfuge would be Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who again is a great Kabbalist, but can, if he wants, come across as a rationalist philosopher. And what struck me about this piece, Haneshama Shel Olam HaTohu, it's one of the very few in the work Orot where Rav Kook bears his chest, I would say. He engages in explicit Kabbalistic language. You're hearing all these Kabbalistic terms, Orot the Tohu, etc. And that makes it unique in in that corpus. As I said earlier, I always viewed myself as a Neshama Shel Olam HaTohu, and the people that I gravitate to and gravitate to me generally fit that description.
Rabbi Naor, that was very beautiful. Thank you so much. I think we'll invite Reb Gerzi to please share some thoughts.
I have to go first? Maybe because I'm short. First of all, I just Hakar Satov for Rabbi Naor. I don't know if you remember, we met about 20 years ago in Rabbi David's shul in Bet Shemesh, and that started our relationship. And it never ended, even though we haven't spoken so regularly. You are regularly in my life, and I appreciate you tremendously. And my wife knows when I'm reading one of your Sfarim, because I've got my fingers in like 3 pages. I've got the pages that I'm reading and then the footnotes, making sure that I could get each footnote to the back correlating. I developed a system to learn your book, so thank you very much.
I think it's called prestidigitation.
So as well, thank you to everybody here. Mamash Hakar Satov. Maybe an idea. I first started to hear about the teachings of the souls of chaos from one of my teachers. His name was Rabbi Singer. He speaks about how already from the times of the Baal Shem Tov, we know there are 4 worlds. In the Kabbalistic writings, there are 4 worlds, and the 4 worlds have certain personality types. And once, long ago, these personality types, these 4 worlds, were very measured, and they were within human experience, very linear. So a person was born an artist, or a person was born a doctor, a person was born a builder. And Reb Aaron rightly says, understanding the bigger picture of the world of Sod, that in our generation, one person can have all 4 worlds. So what that would translate as, once upon a time, a person was born to a family of Sfadim, or a family of Ashkenazim, or family of doctors or lawyers, and they would naturally, easily, seamlessly follow. And as we come closer to our year 6000, we could be born into a family and everything could be really settled and defined, yet we want to go here or there. That's one layer of experience, not following in the family footsteps. But then there's another layer of experience, even within ourselves, which a singer would share, and that is that at one moment we may want to be the tzaddik hador, we want to be mamash kadosh and tahor, and have nothing to do with the physical world. And then the next moment we want to be a lamdan, pilpulim, understanding all the sidus, all the secrets. And then the next moment, no, I want to be an academic. I want to be an academic, and I want to be, I want to understand academia, PhD. And then the next moment, I want to be a therapist. But then it goes even more wild. The next moment, I want to be a Rosh Hashanah. I want to do everything under the sun. And we're thrown around. We have these experiences within us that, on a certain respect, we don't necessarily fit. Where do I fit? Like 1 minute I want this, and next minute I want that. In the world, for example, of careers, once upon a time, a person held a job for 30 odd years. And today, the average person has 5, 6, 7 different careers. So for Rabbi Singer, this world that we're speaking to is a world that's ever so important. It gives us the ability to recognize that we do fit. And it gives us hopefully the ability to cultivate a vessel to hold the craziness, if we can, to hold that chaos. And as my son, not the one that was here before, my other son, he asked me, he said to me, he says, Abba, if you can share with me right now, what are 2 important skills? 2 important skills that you can work with, the worlds of chaos. And I said to him, I mean, I come from, doesn't matter where I come from, but a few of us here, Baruch Hashem, we're from the same cut, so to speak. And I said to him, I think to listen and to contemplate, to hear somebody, to give that space for somebody to experience. And as the Sod Yesharim says, maybe this, we call it Olam Hatol, Olam Hatikun, but as well it's a phase. Everything are phases, and we all go through these phases. And just to end with one more point, I'm not sure how long we speak for, but just to end with one more point, which comes up right now. And that is that my great uncle, who was a descendant of the Vilna Gaon, so he would say on several different sources that speak about the idea of chutzpah. So he said to me, I don't want you to think that chutzpah is, they're just cutting off from you. They're not listening. That's not what chutzpah means. He said something very insightful that I hold close to me. He said chutzpah is a generational language. Just as the Gemara in Yuma speaks about how Rabbi used to bring home vessels to break for his kids to play. It's part of life, and it's a generational language. And he said, I hope the older generation could learn really to listen to the language of the next generation, because they are speaking, they are expressing. It may not be in ways that you understand, and know that that's okay.
Beautiful, Rav Gerzi. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Rav Ze'ev, would you like to please share some reflections with us?
Okay, first of all, I want to say to Rav Bezalel Naor, wow, you've had a big effect on so many Jews' lives, and your translations are really, I would say, historically important, not just personally important. So thank you very much for all the work you've done over the years. I think your translations have brought to life Rav Kook. So the fact that we're all speaking about this amazing Ma'amar, Rav Kook, Ol Matohu, Nishamat Ol Matohu, it's mainly because of your translation. So you really bring Rav Kook alive to us. So thank you, and I'm excited to see what you translate next. In terms of this amazing Ma'amar of Rav Kook, the way I always think about it is it's structured into 3 parts. And that's the way I usually teach it to my students, that there are really 3 main themes going on. That there are souls that are, I would say, on the bottom level. So that would, the way I always think of it is Ol Matohu Tachton. They're the lowest type of Tohu souls. They only know how to destroy. And they're chaotic. They're always criticizing, angry. And they're the people in the class who are always insulting, criticizing, destroying, trying to destroy every topic you bring up, every idea you have. And I would call that rebel without a cause. And they are what they are. And you meet those types of people. Then there's Ol Matikun souls, which is the level up. Those are people who want to follow the halakha. They're good students, good Jews. And they have tmimut, to use Rabbi Nachman's language, and we need to respect them. And they don't really understand why there's so many questions and problems and people wanting to leave Judaism. They just see Judaism as muvan me'elav. It's the natural thing for a Jew to do, and it's hard for them to comprehend. And I think Rav Kook, in his life, he was dealing with those 2 levels. He had the secular Zionists with those Tohu on the lower level. They were just rebellion, angry all the time. If anyone historically knows, the Brenner, I think of a lot. That's the Tohu Tachton, just angry all the time at Judaism and what it's doing and wanting to destroy everything. So there are people like that Rav Kook was dealing with in his life. And then there was the Tikkun souls. It seems to be they were the Haredim, the Kanaim of Rav Kook's time period. And I would say we have them today as well, people who legitimately and genuinely love Judaism, and they don't understand why people are angry at it, and don't understand why the secular world is not following Torah. And there is something to them, and they have the word tikkun. It's a beautiful word, tikkun. They fix things. But the highest level, it seems to be in this Ma'amar Rav Kook, is the Tohu souls, and he calls them. I'm going to read the phrase. He says, המעולים יודעים גם לבנות את העולם הנהרס, אבל הגרועים שהנטייה האידיאלית היותר עליונה נגעה בהם רק נגיעה כלשהי, הם רק מחבלים ומהרסים, והם המושרשים בעולם התוהו בערכו הנשבר. So he says here that the greatest version of Tohu souls, what I was calling the Tohu Elyon, the highest, they know how to not only criticize, but they can also build. So that would be like a rebel with a cause. And I think that is what Rav Kook was. And in many ways, he understood the struggles and the pains and the criticisms of, the whole world around them. And in that sense, he identified in a very profound way with the critique of the secular Zionists. And I would say in our generation, people who have critiques of Judaism and are upset at it and don't connect to it. But on the other hand, yodim livnot. And that is something which Rav Kook is trying to encourage me. Whenever I'm studying this piece, I'm thinking, how can I not only criticize, but also build? And that's a hard thing to do, because it's very easy for me to get into criticism mentality and being upset. Why aren't people following Torah the way I want them to follow it? And why isn't Judaism the way I think it should be? So that's, I think, a challenge to myself. Every time I started this piece, how can I be Ha'me'ulim, the better version of the Tohu Soul, and not the worst version? I don't think I was ever even able to get to the Tikkun. It could be, it's just a flaw of mine. I can't just do things the way they're supposed to be done. But I do have two options. I could be a rebel without a cause, or a rebel with a cause. I could hurt Judaism and hurt Hashem and hurt, the world through my honesty, or I could use my honesty to build the world. And I think that's the challenge of this piece, to really become someone who can be honest and see struggles, but also actually use that honesty and creativity to do something constructive, and just to be very practical. I think that's my main goal every time I walk into a class to teach Torah, to, on the one hand, identify with the struggles of my students, and then to challenge them not to stay with the question, but to actually move towards an answer. There are answers. Halakha is an answer. Torah is an answer. So not to just stay forever in the, we don't understand, there are problems, everything's complex. I don't think we should stay in that state forever. I think it needs to be legitimized, but eventually to move people towards committing to marriage, committing to Judaism, committing to living in Eretz Yisrael. B'ezrat Hashem.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rav Ze'ev. Very insightful, very practical for those of us that are teaching. Rav Dovid'l, if you could please unmute yourself and share reflections on the original piece, as well as perhaps some guidance as to how to deal with the individuals of this nature.
For everybody, first of all, if I can make a suggestion, we should do this every Sunday. Why is this? This is great. Why limit this to a one-time event? Wow, deeply humbled and embarrassed almost to be on this prestigious panel. As you heard when Rabbi Eliyahu was reading out the various different bios, mine was like, he's a nice guy, lives with his wife in Yerushalayim, which that's, for me, that's great. I'll take that. I think I wrote that myself. Be a nice guy. The common denominator between everybody here, Rabbi Naor, as everybody has been saying, has been a source of deep admiration personally and education for a long time, and have been following in the shadows with great interest. And the common denominator between everybody here who has been speaking, and I assume that, Hamachuber the tahor, as our sages say. So all those who are joining also, if we would only have the great fortune to be able to hear them speak as well, is that each of the panelists who have spoken so far, and just from my personal relationships with them and their writings, are first-rate intellects, people of great wisdom, great knowledge. But coming back to what I said before, there's just a kindness, a sweetness to just a sweetness that goes beyond being just a head with some good ideas and a little bit articulate. And that, for me, is what makes this such a special thing, which is why I invite it every Sunday. I'd be happy to jump on here and to spend time with people who are both wise and kind. That's a great privilege.
Rav Dovid'l, don't tempt me.
The sincere offer. I just want to reflect briefly on the piece, and maybe to bring together the question of sort of my reaction to the piece, as well as, I'll put it as a question. I'll sort of answer it as I'm, did Rav Kook see himself as one of these neshamos from the Olam of Tohu? How could you say no? Every writing of Rav Kook is pulled in a million directions. And as Rav Gerzi was talking about this experience of, wanting to be a lamdan, an academic, and a person who's, building institutions to help to better other people's lives. And I was reminded of the Chaim, that the saintly Chafetz Chaim used to describe this millennium that we're sort of in right now, this time period right now, is like we are on the cusp of the Yom Shakula Shabbos as Erev Shabbos, and anyone who's ever been into a good Jewish home on an Erev Shabbos knows that, from one second to the next, it looks like we have to set the air conditioning, and then we have to, put some salt in the soup, and then we have to, the clothing, tailor and a cook and and trying to make sure that there's so many different things happening every second. In the last minutes, we're trying to put the final tikkunim on the world. It looks very chaotic. It looks very tohu, but it's actually leading us to this place of tikkun. And so my reaction to this piece, every time I come into contact with it, should be more often, is to think of this remarkable journey of Rav Kook's life. I actually wrote an introduction. Thank you, Rabbi Allen, for my book. I wrote an introduction to the Sefer, which was dedicated actually to my dear Rebbe and mentor, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Levine, who, as Rabbi Naor pointed out in his book, Bringing Down Dreams, was the first person to be named after, as I heard from his mouth, Rabbi Levine's mouth, was the first person to be named after Rav Kook, or one of the first to be named after Rav Kook after his passing. And Rabbi Levine also had this personality of being a poet and a lamdin and a person who deeply was passionate about shepherding his flock. And these personalities, these souls who are following in the steps of Rav Kook, who are pulled in so many different directions. I wrote in the introduction that Rabbi Kook's name, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook's name, is suffused with this way of being pulled in different directions, the feeling of being in tohu. That is to say that Avraham and Yitzchak, which are opposites, Avraham, who is this paragon of universality and chesed and kindness, and Yitzchak, who is more internalized, and they're struggling within Rav Kook's personality. A Kohen in rabbinic literature, a Kohen is both supposed to be detached from the people, like we find in Parshas Emor, we just read, not to become tamei to the rest of the nation, but to be completely transcended. And he's shlucha derachmana, he is the messenger of the Almighty, and representing the Almighty in the relationship, as well as representing humanity and being a human and a real, able to, a real mentor to those who have fallen and scraped their knees, and to be able to have both those qualities of a Kohen and Kook, which means, of course, it stands for Kodesh Kodashim, I think I once read in, but Kook means to look in Yiddish, to see with two-dimensional vision, this way and to see that way, and to be able to be pulled in two different directions and still somehow remain whole. I want to just end my thoughts here because there's probably so much more to say. I was deeply moved. I'm quite a few years late on having read it, but this past Pesach, on Shvi Shel Pesach, I read from cover to cover Rabbi Dr. Professor Yehuda Mirsky's biographical sketch, if you could call it by such a trite name. It's really a deep dive into Rav Kook's personality. Rav Kook, a mystic in the time of revolution, and for me, the whole book was a roller coaster of new information and beautifully put old information. The most remarkable part of reading that book was the very last paragraph. And with permission from the panelists, I just want to read very quickly this last paragraph, which describes the last day of Rav Kook's life. And if we're talking here about being a neshama from the olam of tohu, as Rav Kook was, and as I know I am, and as all the panelists have agreed that they are as well, every neshama of tohu, Rabbi Ze'ev was saying before that those souls of tikkun, don't give up on yourself, Ze'ev. I know I haven't given up on myself. We'll get to that place of tikkun. There's just like there's the tohu of the lower tohu and the upper tohu. There's also the upper tikkun. There's an upper tikkun that we can strive for. And in thinking of Rav Kook as this torn personality, as this split personality, who is Avram and Yitzchak, who is Shlucha Derachmana, who is the representative for the divine and the representative for the people, and the right eye and the left eye, and this three-dimensional figure who's so torn, these last few sentences, it's about 3 or 4 sentences here, are just so cathartic and really summarize a sort of hope that I have for all of us here, and really for the Jewish people, those who feel that they're pulled in the direction of the old Yishuv and the new Yishuv, and however that, the various iterations of that throughout all of our lives. And this is what he writes. The last day of his life was September 1st, 1935. The third day of Elul, 16 years to the day since his arrival in Jerusalem. He was surrounded by his rabbinic colleagues, Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, Rav Yechiel Michal Chikachinsky, and Rav Ari Levine. Rav David Cohen the Nazir stood in the courtyard downstairs, his face buried in a tree. At the very end, Rav Kook's were still moving. Rav Yaakov Moshe Charap leaned over him and heard him say, even now, my hope in God doesn't falter. Even now, when I'm pulled in so many directions, my hope in God doesn't falter. Rav Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen Kook turned his face to the wall as the attending physician rinsed the blood from his body and then faced them all once again. They began to say the Shema together, and he joined them on the final word, one. The hope for all of us is that these neshamas of Tohu, which we all are, which are pulled in two directions, lifachot, two directions, halavai, two directions, 6 directions, 6 million directions, we're pulled in so many directions. And the hope and the havtacha, the promise, is that these neshamas of the Olam Tohu will, as Rav Kook was able to finally find and rest on that word echad, able to find the place of echad. And so I hope that this is part of the journey. People coming together from different places. It looks like we have some people from the United States and some people from Eretz Yisrael, and we have people who look different from each other and are thinking differently from each other. And the whole goal is to respect one another and to find a place of oneness amongst that chaos of being pulled in two different directions. Hashem should help us that we should find it, and we should find it together.
Thank you so much, Rav Dovid'l. So beautiful. I definitely have to spend more time learning with you. Rabbi Naor, you offered to share a unique insight about Cain and Hevel, so we will go back to handing you the floor. Thank you so much, Rav Dovid'l.
This is not in this book. It's in an earlier work, Yechidah Shebenefesh, and it's a slim work. It's something I published in Yerushalayim in the year 1985. So that's what, 38 years ago, almost 40 years ago. And what I was seeing at that time was that the earliest paradigm of Tohu and Tikkun is Cain v'Hevel, the story we have in the Bible, Cain and Abel, very famous, where there's enmity between the two brothers. It's really the First World War. And eventually Cain kills his brother Hevel. And I was seeing those two figures as the archetypes of Tohu and Tikkun. Now, if you look in the Kitvei Harizah, that's the corpus of Lurianic Kabbalah, you're not going to find this. And at that time in Yerushalayim, I had two great teachers of Kabbalah. One has since transitioned, the other one is still alive. Soll sein gesund. And so one of my great teachers said, nowhere in the Kitvei Arizal does it say that Cain is Tohu, Cain is chaos, and Hevel is Tikkun. The other teacher, when I told him what the first teacher said, he said, that's true. He smiled. He said, that's true. It's nowhere in the Kitvei Arizal. He said, it's your own chidush, but it's very good. So that teacher that gave it as Haskama, his name was Rav Shlomo Fisher, if anyone heard of him. He was a great Kabbalist in the Lithuanian tradition. He passed away about a year ago, Rav Shlomo Fisher. So what I'm going to tell you now has this stamp of approval of Rav Shlomo Fisher, even though it's not in the writings of the Ari. The teaching goes like this, and it speaks very much to what we were saying, what everyone has been saying, that these two categories are not mutually exclusive. They can show up in the same human being. They can reside in the same house. And also, we're going to see in a moment amazing role reversal, how in one generation, Kayin is Tohu, and Hevel is Tikkun, and in another generation, they do a flip. They do an exact role reversal. When we come to Parshat Jethro, Moshe Rabbeinu is the only judge in town, and he's overwhelmed. And one can imagine he's floundering. And along comes his father-in-law, Yitro, and he says, I can set up for you a judicial system, a hierarchy, because this is impossible. It's impossible for one man to adjudicate. And Yitro does that, and he sets up a whole judicial system. Now, in Kabbalah, this becomes fascinating because who is Moshe and who is Yitro? So Moshe, if you take his name, Mem Shin He, that's Moshe Shet Hevel. You have his pedigree, his lineage, working your way backwards. So there's Moses, Seth, and Abel. So according to Kabbalah, Moshe is a Gilgul of Hevel, of Abel. And Yitro is a replay of Kayin. He's called Yitro HaKeni, which is a giveaway. So he is the reincarnation, we'll call him, of Kayin. And as I said, back in Breshit, Hevel is he's the neshama, the tikkun. He's the fellow who's calm and placid and peaceful, and everything is hunky-dory. And Kayin is this fiery rebel, this revolutionary who's so destructive, and eventually he ends up murdering his brother. But in the next generation, the next Gilgul, the roles are reversed. So Moshe, who used to be Hevel, he's overwhelmed. It's chaotic. It cannot go on this way. It's insupportable. And along comes Kayin, who was a great revolutionary, and he's the one who introduces order and sets up such an amazing, orderly hierarchy, a bureaucracy, for better, for worse. And that's what I published back in 1985. And as I said, one great Kabbalist said, this is not in the Ari, and he didn't really want to hear too much about it. And my other Rebbe, Rav Shlomo Fisher, said, he laughed. He said, the other one's right. It's not in the Ari, but it's very good. Since then, I've been able to source it. And one of the places I want to take you to is this. It's the Beis Yaakov. This is the second Ishbitzer Rebbe, not the more famous one, Rav Mordechai Yosef, his son, Rav Yaakov, who also lived in Ishbitz at the end in Radzin. And in Parshat Achrei Mot, I'm not going to give you all of the coordinates. If you want later, I can supply them. But the Beit Yaakov in Parshat Achrei Mot says exactly what I said, that Kayin is Tohu. Okay. That's one thing. The other place I want to send you to, and Rabbi Gerzi, I don't know, he read my mind. He mentioned Ishbitz, but he also mentioned this man. Okay, this is the Avodat Halevi. This is the Strashel Rebbe. He was the Talmid Muvhak of the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, Rav Shneur Zalman Liadi. This was his greatest student. He studied under the Alter Rebbe for 30 years. And you can take a look what he says in Parshat Yitro and what he says in Parshat Breshit. And way before these gentlemen, another place I would want to send you is Shnei Luchot HaBrit, Rabbi Yeshayahu Halevi Horvitz, the Shalah Kadosh. in Parshat V'etchanan, and maybe we'll start with him, and then I'll give you tidbits from the others, and they're really worth exploring, believe me. In Parshat V'etchanan, the Shalah records a teaching of the Ari that the Gvurot are much higher than the Chasadim. Rav Dovid'l mentioned Avram and Yitzchak, Chesed and Gvura. And the teaching is that the Gvurot are much higher than the Chasadim. And says the Shalah, quoting from the Arizal, this world, the Hanhaga of this world is Chesed, which is Hevel. And the rabbis tell us, the Chazal tell us, V'zeh shamruzal b'midrash Kohelet, in Midrash Kohelet, Torah sh'adam lomed b'olam hazeh hevel hi lifnei Torato shel Mashiach. The Torah that we study in this world is hevel compared to the Torah that's coming with the coming of Mashiach. Perush hevel hi, v'adai mibchinat hevel. It goes back to hevel, to the biblical figure Abel. Aval Torato shel Mashiach mibchinat gvurat Kayin. But the Torah of Mashiach will not be the Torah of Abel. It'll be the Torah of Cain, of Kayin, of Gvura. So this is the Shalah Kadosh, who is universally embraced by the Jewish people. And I know time is very limited. Let me think what I can extract from the Strashelyer and the Ishbitzer. Well, it has to do with the opposition of wool versus flax. Because Abel is a shepherd, and Cain was an agriculturalist, and Abel sacrifices sheep, and Cain sacrifices, according to Chazal, Zera Pishtan, which is flax. And so the Ishbitzer, who besides being a great Kabbalist, is also a great halachist, juxtaposes a Mishnah in Bava Metzia. I have it right here. It's the 9th parak. It's stuff Kuf Ted Amud Aleph. Hamekabel sadeh mechavero l'shanim u'atot lo yizra'ena pishtan. If you lease a field, you should not sow it with pishtan, with flax. And Rashi explains, shezera pishtan makhish ba'aretz harbe, because when you sow flax, it sucks the nutrition out of the soil. It impoverishes, it weakens, it destroys the soil. So that's very apropos, says the Ishbitzer, to Cain, because Cain is the Neshama de Tohu. And the Neshamot de Tohu have this about them, where, as Rav Kook said, they want to take it all in, but in the process, they tend to destruction, they destroy. That's one image. The Strashelyer also deals with this opposition of wool and flax in a different way, because another word for the pishtan is bad. White, the white fabric that the Kohen would wear. It's called bad. And bad is like boded, alone. Rugged individualism, where you can't be sovel other people. You can't work in tandem with others. You don't know how to integrate into a society. You don't know about mutual cooperation. That's called bad. That's pishta. That's kayin. That's in the Shema Dado. Whereas wool, it's all together, and things can get stuck in the wool because the hairs of the wool, they're all intertwined. And that's hevel. That symbolizes integration. That symbolizes the Olam Tikkun. And finally, the Strashelyer And we'll end with this. I mean, my part, you're free to go on. He quotes that beautiful verse in Eshet Chayil, Dashat Semer Ufishtim, Batas Bechefetz Kapeha. And this is the 31st chapter of Mishlei. It's the final chapter of the book of Proverbs by King Solomon. And it's all about Knesset Yisrael. It's singing the beautiful praise of the Jewish people, the amazing ability that we Jews have, the amazing potential if we could only actualize it. And one of the attributes of this amazing woman, Knesset Yisrael, is Darshat Semer Ufishtim. She seeks out both the wool and the flax, both in the Shemot Tikkun and the Shemot Tohu. Batas bechefetz kapeha, and that's the chefetz, that's the ratzon helyon. That's what God really wants. So the Jewish people fulfills the divine will by learning somehow to integrate both kinds of neshamot, the woolen souls, the flaxen souls, the Cains, the Abels, the Tohu, the Tikkun. Amen. Ken Yiratzon.
Amen. Beautiful, Rabbi Naor. Thank you so much. That was so lovely. It was such a privilege to learn together with you and with the other panelists. Tremendous hakarat hatov to all of them, Rav Gerzi, Rav Ze'ev, Rav Dovid'l, and a special thank you to all of those that joined us out there. I'm sorry that we didn't have a question and answer. Amir Hashem, that will give us the excuse to have another panel. So thank you so much.